Summer vacation is almost over for nearly 1 million students. Chancellor Melissa Aviles-Ramos is here with something to celebrate.
Yes!
And we are celebrating.
Our new test scores came in, huge increases for New York City public schools.
So first we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about New York reads. Reading scores are up.
Yes, they are.
Tell me about it. How big an increase?
7.2 percentage point increase across the entire school district, which is huge because, you know, we have 1,600 schools, nearly 1 million students, and to see that kind of gain after rolling out New York City Reads for 2 years is really just incredible. But
let's explain to our viewers like what that means, how you changed the curriculum and so people are reading differently. Explain that.
Absolutely. So this started 2 years ago under my predecessor, Chancellor David Banks, and I was his chief of staff. So a team of us worked closely with him to launch what we call New York City Reads. And this was a shift in curriculum that is rooted in the science of reading. So there was a time where teachers were doing whole language instruction. They weren't really using a phonics-based approach to reading.
So this is phonics-based?
Yes, it is.
Easier for kids to learn?
Yes. And learning how syllables work and learning about phonemes and things that we stopped teaching in school for a while. So this was really important. And on top of that, teachers were also receiving coaching and support to implement these curricula in the schools.
But we're not just celebrating New York Reads. We're celebrating New York Solves.
NYC Solves,
which is?
It's our math sister initiative to go with NYC Reads, which is super exciting too. And that launch was a little bit rockier. We did receive some pushback initially, but Michael Mulgrew has been such a great partner, and we immediately went into schools and heard from teachers, and we pulled together some of the best math teachers across New York City, and they helped us make adjustments to the curriculum, and as a result, we're now seeing both very successful.
So I need to ask you, the scores are up a lot in white students and Asian students, but not so much among minority students. What's going on there, and what new programs are you going to do to try to help them?
Absolutely, and that's such an important question. So I do want to note, though, that our Black and Latina students made huge increases, more than any other population. In fact, our Black students outperformed all the other student population groups, over 8%, over 8 percentage point increase. That being said, less than 50% are still reading at proficient or better, which is unacceptable. So as I've told my team, yes, this is a moment for celebration, but it's definitely not a moment to rest. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about is how we are supporting students at the intervention phase. So let's say you're sitting in class, and even though the teacher is teaching, you might not be getting it. We sometimes pull students out of class and give them tutoring. We have to pay attention at what's going on in that instructional moment just as much as what's happening in the regular classroom. So we're doing a lot of that work this year, and we expect to see even better results.
Are we talking also about remedial classes after school, or you think you can do it within the school day?
So we actually are really paying attention to pilots where it happens in the actual school day and classroom. We want to make sure that kids are not being pulled out for subpar instruction, but after school tutoring isn't a bad thing either. But, you know, working with our teachers and even with our nonprofit organizations and CBOs that support kids, making sure that they understand what we're doing is important too.
So another big change for the school system is going to be a mandatory bell-to-bell cell phone ban. I wonder, you know, what's the biggest challenge that you're going to face? You have so many schools,
yep.
so many students, so many different ages. What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, so this is new to some of our schools, but not all of our schools, because prior to the state mandate, we had over half of our schools already restricting cell phones. I was a principal, and I restricted cell phones in my school. I used the collection method. There are 3 different kinds of methods that schools can use. They can use the magnetic pouch, they can collect them, or they can store them in lockers. So really the first step was to adjust our chancellor's regulation that supports that work. We've surveyed the schools where this is new, and we're working really closely with them to make sure that they're ready for the first day of school.
But what are you doing to appease parents that are worried? I mean, there's some schools I know around the state are thinking of having a cell phone that can't get on the internet. Are we going to do anything like that in New York? I mean, how are you going to make parents feel like everything's okay?
Yeah, well, this is the reason why Mayor Adams and I wanted to kind of pause on rolling this out last year, because we wanted to engage with families and we wanted to make sure that we had our stuff together in place. So what does that mean? That means making sure that if someone calls their child's school, that someone's going to pick up, that if there's an emergency, they can reach someone and let them know, that the school has a clear system for communication with families. Our Gamma system They can immediately send information and messages to families in multiple languages. So we wanted to perfect that before we started restricting cell phone use.
So do you think that parents are now appeased and are going to be happy with the system that you're going to roll out starting in September?
I think that eventually parents will see the benefit.
So in the beginning, you're going to get some
In the beginning,
cost.
I'm sure we'll get some pushback. You know, I've had conversations with parents already. I think it makes many of them, once they talk to me directly, which I do all the time, and tell them, hey, I restricted cell phone use and it worked and it's fine. And so they trust us.
So let me ask you another question. You know, the past couple of weeks, a number of students, one in particular hit the, was involved this week, have been arrested by ICE agents when they went, not in schools, but they went to the regularly scheduled appointments in courts, and they were arrested and taken into custody.
Yeah.
How big a problem is that for you, and what are you telling your students to do? Are you telling them not to go to court? Are you telling them you have to go to court, especially if they face the possibility of being arrested?
Yeah, I'm sure you know, Marcia, that I started my time at the central office leading and launching Project Open Arms, which was the multi-agency effort to support our newest New Yorkers. So this is something that's very near and dear and personal to me. We have amped up the number of Know Your Rights trainings for our families, Know Their Rights training for our parent coordinators, for our parent leaders, for our principals and our teachers, because we think that's so important. The other thing is we have great partners in our elected officials and in our advocates, as well as groups like Project Rousseau that are connecting families to legal services. Moya has been a tremendous partner. So we are working with families on a case-by-case basis and getting them the resources. We keep telling families, send your children to school. Schools are safe places. And by staying connected in that larger ecosystem with elected officials and with advocates and with families, we're confident that we're going to weather the storm together.
But a lot of these arrests, in fact, all of them that I've covered, have happened when they've gone to court. They're not coming into the schools, at least yet, but they are going to court. So are you giving students and parents any advice about whether they should actually keep their court appointments?
Well, in our trainings, we talk to them about knowing their rights and what does that look like regardless of the setting.
So another question that's sort of come up has to do with mayoral control of the schools. I know Mayor Adams is a strong proponent of mayoral control, but some of the candidates who are running for mayor say maybe there should be some pullback. I wonder how you feel about that and whether these current panels should be given more power.
You know, I have a really close relationship, or I like to think that I do, with our parent leaders. I've invested a lot in working with our panel for educational policy. They are tremendous partners, and people want to feel heard. They want to feel respected. I will say that through Mayoral Control, we were able to launch New York City Reads and Solves, which is proving successful. That would be very difficult to do in a decentralized system. But I think that what's most important is to really build those relationships with stakeholders so they feel heard, regardless of whether it's mayoral control or not.
But if you had the ability to talk to any of these mayoral candidates who are going to say, maybe we shouldn't have so much mayoral control, where would you come down on that? What would you say to them? You know,
I would say to them that it's important to relationship build and to make sure that every stakeholder feels heard and seen, and that even if you don't have mayoral control, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone feels heard. And so I think it's not a flaw in either of the structures, but maybe in how we're implementing.
Well, you don't want to see more the local school boards come back.
It would definitely be interesting to see local boards come back.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But up next, Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel, who just won a Democratic primary in the Manhattan Borough President's race. Back with Schools Chancellor Melissa Aviles-Ramos. So I wanted to ask you, look, it's back to school. What can we expect in September?
I think we can expect stronger communication with families, a lot more student agency. The benefit that I have, Marcia, is that I'm not only the chancellor and I'm not only a 2-decade educator, I'm also the mom of a New York City public school student.
A sixth grader, right?
A sixth grader, a rising sixth grader. And so seeing the system through her eyes and having experienced it as a parent, I can acknowledge some of the places where we can do better. And that's why parent empowerment is so important to me. So we're making clear, what should you expect in your classroom as a student? What should you expect in terms of support as a teacher? And what should you expect for your child's education experience as a parent? And how do you to now use all of that to advocate for your children in the right way.
So what do you tell them to expect?
I tell them to expect safe spaces, to make sure that when they call their school that they can get on the phone with a parent coordinator or some sort of a parent-facing leader. I expect them to have accessible principals, to have teachers who are nurturing and supportive. I expect them that if they, heaven forbid, experience any kind of bullying, that there is a clear system to escalate that and have it dealt with immediately. I expect them to experience New York City Reads and New York City Solves curriculum. So we're excited. Lots of good stuff happening.
So one of the things that you're going to have to cope with in this new term is the fact that you have to reduce class size. And so I wonder how much of a problem that is. And have you had to hire more teachers? Are you trying to open more schools? How are you going to, because you have to meet some targets this year.
Yeah, we do. And we are in the process of hiring 3,700 additional new teachers.
Wow.
Yes. And I think what was so great about this is when we gave schools the opportunity to put forth their proposals on what they needed to comply with the mandate, whether that was converting large spaces into classrooms or hiring new teachers, new administrators. They told us what they needed. We assessed to make sure that that is in fact what they needed, and then Michael Mulgrew, Henry Rubio, and I all had to sign off on those plans. So dollars are going to schools that need them. They are able to implement these plans. They have been actively recruiting these teachers. So this is the best way to comply with this law.
But 3,700 teachers is a big number.
It is a big number.
Where are you getting them from? I mean,
well, New York City Teaching Fellows has been an amazing partner. I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I was a teaching fellow. We have Teach for America and just our university partners. I mean, Chancellor Matos Rodriguez, Chancellor King, they have been incredible partners in other universities in helping prepare the next generation of great teachers.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about is the fact that, there's now a proliferation of legal cannabis shops that are sort of near some schools. I'm wondering if that's proving to be a problem for the schools, if kids are, especially in junior high and high school, are partaking of the things that they can buy and they're arriving at school with marijuana.
Yeah, this goes back to providing safe spaces for young people and the kinds of activities and motivation so they know that they don't have to make those choices. We also have great partnerships with our elected officials who work with us whenever we see some sort of an issue that could, or the beginnings of an issue. And so I think we're going to be fine.
So when I had Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the American Federation of Teachers, on my show not too long ago, she talked about the fact that she thinks that it's important to teach vocational studies as well as college studies, and that there are many things that people can do in getting jobs in the real world that doesn't require a college degree. What is the school system doing to prepare kids for careers in being an electrician or a construction worker or in IT, things that they don't have to go to college for?
Yeah, I'm really proud of our pathways work because we have Future Ready NYC, and we also have expanded our CTE program, and that is in great partnership with the UFT. I attended a great think tank with Randy Weingarten and Michael Mulgrew, and we know that this is a priority for students. What we want to make sure is that we are not marking students early on and saying you're not college material, you should do this. We want to provide students an opportunity to choose paths that meet their needs, but that adults are not saying, you didn't do too well on this test, so we think you should not aspire to college. That's not okay. Multiple paths for students to choose their own is what is needed, preparation and access, but I want to be clear with adults that we are not pushing kids into any one particular track.
But many of these jobs that are available are high-paying jobs.
Sure are.
High-paying middle-class jobs. And I wonder, if they're given the opportunity to evaluate them as a career choice because they can live incredibly good lives and earning a great living.
Well, that's why the college and career readiness piece, notice it's college and career, and working with our school counselors so they're aware of all of the different options that our kids have so they can talk through them with them and make sure that they understand what they can apply for, what is available to them. Those conversations are super important.
So another issue for the school system is the increase in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
Yes.
What is the school system going to be doing this year? I know it's a particular concern of the president, but also in a mayoral race where, you know, the winner of the Democratic primary was a Muslim American, you know, there's been sort of an increase in hatred in the city. And I wonder, you know, are you preparing to deal with that, and what are you going to be doing?
Absolutely. And the meeting the moment work that started a couple of years back is absolutely continuing. And we have seen the number of hate incidents decline over the last year. I have an interfaith council, so we work with Jewish and Muslim leaders and Christian leaders across New York City to do targeted training for teachers and principals. We want to expand that into the student to the student training as well. We have amazing student ambassadors. I spent some time with them through Superintendent Noah DeAngelis, who oversees our New Visions network, and those students are doing incredible work. But we know that hate is often learned outside of the school building, and so that's why we want to make sure that those trainings are not limited to teachers, but also to students and to families.
So last question, how's enrollment? I know that, you know, over the last several years there was like decline, and then with the influx of immigrants that sort of went up. How are we doing now?
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. We are at almost 1 million students. Wow. You know, I think what's important for us is making sure that people know that there are excellent schools in their neighborhoods. I think sometimes people don't know that. And again, you know my personal story. I don't want anybody to have to make the choices that my mom did. They should be able to send their child to Catholic or charter or private, whatever they want. But what's not acceptable is that you don't have an excellent school in your backyard that's free and part of the public education system and that you can rely on.
Chancellor Melissa Aviles-Ramos, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us as well.